been a pretty big fan of superheroes in general, and in particular DC Comics, but for me that mostly comes in the form of me reading some comics now and then playing the games. For instance, the Arkham games are some of the best Batman content ever produced in my opinion. Hell, pretty much anything Batman's going to attract my interest, and I rather liked the recent Wonder Woman films too. Although I do know that the more recent one, Wonder Woman 1984, got a more mixed reception. I still liked it. I gave those CW TV shows a miss, you know the ones, the Arrowverse. Pretty sure they were popular though. They just weren't my cup of tea. Speaking of which, neither's Superman. I've never been able to get into the character at all, and it's not for lack of trying. I remember going to see Superman Returns in 2006, and I just didn't care for it. I don't remember thinking it was bad, but I just didn't connect with it. Same with Man of Steel, it's a fine movie, but it never got me vibing with the character either. Once again, it was a similar issue for Batman vs Superman. Justice League was just bad, so I don't think I was ever going to get invested in the franchise from that alone. And so yeah, it just wasn't in the cards. The only Superman adjacent type content I've ever been massively invested in is the Iron Giant, where he's a big fan of Superman and wants to be just like him. But that's very, very, very loosely linked. Anyway, Superman. When the new DCU was announced, I will admit I was massively skeptical. Felt like the Marvel Cinematic Universe had become the gold standard of superhero films over the course of the 2010s. They just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, earning more money, and more acclaim at the same time. The DCEU was doing well at times, but by the end, the wheels had well and truly fallen off. As for the Sonyverse, well, I think it's best if we forget about that for the time being after such masterpieces as Madam Web. The idea of a new DCU, that's one that had me feeling very unsure. The reality is that even Marvel has been struggling in the last couple of years, feeling bloated and directionless. Recently, the Thunderbolts has been good, and perhaps they're getting on track to have a more streamlined and narrative-focused world, but at least with the MCU, I've got years of goodwill that lets me somewhat trust they can do it. The DCEU, less so. This whole thing for me is being carried by the fact that it's being helmed by James Gunn, and on top of that, he's directing the first movie, he's leading the charge, and if it flops, well, the buck stops with him. I didn't bother making a video on the first teasers and trailers for this because, like I said, I just wasn't feeling it. Then this trailer came out, and I don't know, it was just really good. I think I'm finally starting to understand, so I wanted to make this video talking about how awesome it is. Here we go. The trailer starts off with the big elephant in the room. How is the film going to deal with the dichotomy of Clark Kent versus Superman, and how they're very obviously looking like the same person? It's always been one of the goofier elements of the story. I guess it probably works better in the context of a comic book where you can draw him differently and try to suspend your disbelief, but it's always funny in movies when you have this superhero who lives in Metropolis, and then the reporter guy who looks very similar and is also massively jacked. To me, this was especially clear with the Henry Cavill version. I mean, who are they fooling with this? Here though, at the very least, while you need to suspend your disbelief with how he looks to an extent, later on we do see Clark fully dressed up in his civilian version, and I'd say he looks dorky enough that I would never say, oh yeah, it's the same guy 100%. However, I still like that they show outright that it's almost like a different personality, a front that he projects in his hero persona. When Lois asks him whether he'd be comfortable doing an interview with her as Superman, he's all chirpy, he's kind of goofy and dorky sounding. Then when the interview starts, he suddenly shifts that persona. It's a deeper voice, more serious and steady. His posture and the way he's sitting changes. I just found it all to be really clever. It seems from the get-go there are going to be cracks for Superman and Lois. From the context of the scene, it feels like the two are already in a relationship or on the verge of being in one, and yet she goes hard on him in the interview. We see that he's struggling under the weight of public scrutiny. There's a shot of him walking morosely through the streets with a crowd of random people screaming at him, and one person even throws a can at the back of his head from point-blank range. Ouch. Gets a nice ricochet off his head too, so the dude was clearly not holding back. We then get a shot of the Pentagon with Lois telling Superman that the Secretary of Defense has publicly stated he's going to be investigating Superman's actions. Superman scoffs and Lois calls him out for thinking it's funny, with Superman incredulously stating that he'd stopped a war. Here we get a clip of what seems to be an actual professional army about to steamroll a bunch of randoms who are clearly not well equipped and are in fact running away from this attack. So I suspect it's going to have been some sort of protest or insurgency that was about to be cracked down on way too hard, and so Superman stepped in to force a peace before anybody could get badly injured. I suspect that him doing this is what the Daily Planet staff are all staring at when you get that shot overlaid where they're all looking at something together. Probably something like him getting blasted by artillery and brushing it off like it's nothing. Lois keeps going hard at him, saying that it's only a maybe that he stopped the war, with Superman then getting a little bit more forceful, saying, no, he did stop the war. No ifs or buts or maybes. He did it. So based on how this early stuff has gone, I'm really suspecting that this happens in the first third of the movie, maybe? Maybe they'll break up after this fight and then they get back together at the end. Just my suspicion. I think he comes into this expecting that she's going to be sympathetic to what he had to do. that she'd be able to understand where he's coming from, but she came into this intending to uphold her journalistic integrity and ask the hard questions regardless of their relationship. Probably would have been better to be interviewed in full costume by somebody else. Don't mix business with your personal life like this. She asks whether he'd consulted the president, which he denies, and then they get into an argument about how it seems like he's a representative of America going around the world projecting his own will, and thus, by doing so, projecting the will of America onto other countries without their consent, which of course could cause an international incident. I'm actually pretty interested in them exploring this idea that he's clearly American, but does that mean he speaks for America? Should he have to wait for what the authorities say is right when he's capable of saving lives and preventing people dying horrible and pointless deaths? It's the classic great power, great responsibility dichotomy, but asking the question of what responsibility should entail. Should he actually be forced to answer to anybody? Or should he go by his own belief system? I mean, maybe they won't actually explore these themes, but based on how the rest of the trailer plays out, I suspect they're going to. And I find that really interesting. Whilst they're having their enthusiastic debate, we see him cuffed and being led into custody by soldiers, and I guess some government-sponsored hero/villain/whatever. Yeah, my knowledge of anybody outside the main DC heroes is going to be extremely lacking here. I know Batman, his gang, some of his villains. I know Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern. Then I start to get massively fuzzy. He gets his face smashed into the concrete by the dude in the black bodysuit, and we also get a look at Lex Luthor for the first time. Bald from the get-go, which is nice. We also get to see Superman doing some Superman-y things. The first part of the trailer is just setting the mood and planting seeds of the story, but here we get some content. I love the slow-mo shot of him zooming in and shielding the little girl from the debris coming at him. It just really showcases what kind of character we're dealing with. And then it's instantly into him fighting a dude in what seems to be a robo-suit. Like I said, most of DC is beyond me, so I have no idea who this is supposed to be, other than he's clearly very strong, because he ragdolls Superman a little bit and seems to rattle him when he slams him into the ground. They even have some random civilian have to help rally him to get him back up and fighting. So how strong is Superman going to be here? I've read that sometimes in the comics he is obscenely strong, and sometimes he's very nerfed. Are they going to make him be one of those people that's a supreme power on Earth, but almost has a mental block because he doesn't want to kill anybody, even a villain? Which often comes to his detriment because it gives villains a chance to fight back against him properly. Or are they simply going to have him not be as strong as all that and really need to earn his wins? I kind of like the idea of the first one, really. I think it makes him seem more unique as a character. I presume this then leads directly into the eyes up here thing. I wonder if this is like an opening fight or something, or more towards the climax of the movie. After all, the dude helping him get back up would imply that he's rather popular as a hero, but in the early section of the trailer, he seems deeply unpopular. Wonder what the timeline's going to be here. The music then swells, we see the Fortress of Solitude, which is awesome, and a fight where Luthor and his goon squad attack the fortress, I guess to try to capture Superman. He was injured in one of the teasers and taken back here by the dog, so I suppose this could be them trying to strike when they think he can't fight back. They murder the friendly robots, which is very sad. And then the dog fights too. I tell you what, if the dog dies, I'm checking out of the DCU instantly. I couldn't handle it. You cannot have a super dog complete with his own little cape and then just kill him off in the first movie, can you? Be evil, pure evil. We see Superman bust out of what I assume is Luthor's prison for him, and he saves a woman. Man, he really slams into her, doesn't he? How do you account for whiplash and concussion when you grab somebody that fast? Ouch. Better than being crushed by that huge rock though, I suppose. There's a shot of Lois and Superman hugging, a reconciliation maybe. Pretty sure they kiss here. Hopefully they don't drag the relationship drama out for too long though. The movie already seems like it's going to be jam-packed as it is. Then we get a cute shot of young Clark running to his dad whilst the narration says that it's his choices and actions that make Superman who he is. I'm guessing this is probably in response to people freaking out that he's an alien and thus could turn on humanity at any time and destroy them. This is his dad giving some wisdom to reaffirm that that assumption isn't true. That Clark is a good person who chooses to be a hero out of genuine compassion for others, not some grimdark origin, not a tragedy pushing him to act out of trauma. He's a simple man with a desire to be good. I think this theme's reaffirmed when we hear from Luthor later on in the trailer, where he talks about how Superman is not a man at all, but an it. Not really understanding that an alien can still be a human in his own way. Damn, I think I'm finally starting to understand this character, and it's moving me away from thinking he's boring. I think a lot of other people are going to feel that way too by the end of this. I mean, as of writing this, it already has 15 million views and is number 1 on trending on YouTube, so it's doing big numbers. People have an appetite for this content. I think my only real fear for this movie is that it's trying to do too much and include too much too early on. There's Superman and Lex Luthor, his dynamic with Lois and their relationship. We need to see his Clark Kent life, and his parents too. On top of that, there's a bunch of side heroes that are involved in this. There's Mr. Terrific, Hawk Girl, and a Green Lantern that I noticed in the trailer. Apparently there's also another hero called Metamorpho in this movie. I don't know, I just think I'm a little bit worried the film's going to be biting off more than it can chew with all that's going on. so much to introduce. Plus, there's all the fights he has. Robot suit guy, the fight in the football stadium, the fight at the fortress, the imprisonment scene. He fights a big dino dude at some point. It's getting very busy, and if they're not careful, it's going to end in disaster. I choose to be hopeful though, as this trailer has left me feeling massively hyped. I do think it's going to blow up, and the DCU is going to start off really hot. It's going to make a lot of money. Whether they can sustain that momentum, that's a different story though. I hope so. I just want both companies to be doing well for a change. Anyway though, that's pretty much everything I took note of from the trailer, and so with all that being said, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the Superman trailer? Did you like it, hate it? Are you excited for the movie? Maybe not. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.